welcome to Interesting Choices, the podcast where we talk about strange and unusual media, TV shows, movies, books, even albums, and we discuss the interesting choices that they make. I'm one of your hosts, Sky.
I'm your other host, Kate.
And I gotta say, this one was a little confusing for me. This week we're talking about the family road trip movie Bingo. At least I thought that's what it was. I saw it a long time ago when I was a kid. I must have remembered it wrong.
Yeah, when you brought this movie up to me, I was like, I'm pretty sure I haven't seen it. But then when I started watching it, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I totally have seen this movie. I probably caught it late night on like USA or something back in the day. But yeah, it's a lot different than I remember.
Yeah, for one thing, Bingo is not his name-o. His name-o is Zowie, and he's not as much of the star of the film as I thought, or at least remember him being.
Yeah, but they did find a really cute dog for Zowie.
Oh yeah, that was just the best dog actor.
There actually were a lot of animals in this movie, surprisingly.
Yeah, there's that weird, not taxidermied crow and all the kittens.
Mm-hmm. A bunch of bunny rabbits. Like, whoever made this movie loved animals, clearly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. We should probably get into the plot that goes pretty quick. There isn't a lot of fat on it. It starts out on a film within a film, some kind of gothic horror, I guess. There's an accident on set, and this kid's mother just gets electrocuted. One of the main things about this movie that kind of didn't really work for me was when it's not using good music, it's using really rote, made-for-TV canned music that's very easily recognizable.
You know, it's the sort of generic stuff you'd see on, like, bad Lifetime movies and stuff. I mean, whatever, it's a kid's movie, so they get whatever they can afford.
Yeah, and there's a lot more grunge on the soundtrack than I remember there being for a kid's movie.
The 90s were a weird time. Every child actor in all these movies kind of looks like Eddie Furlong for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
This one, no exception. He kind of looked like a lesbian Eddie Furlong, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, and like whoever it is, he's wearing like this weird varsity jacket, denim vest thing. I don't know the symbol in the back. I thought it was Calvin Klein, but I didn't get a good look at it.
I'm not going to lie. When I was 18, I wore a similar oversized leather jacket to school all the time. Mine could not fit kittens in it because I was allergic, but otherwise, I related.
But to escape the tragedy of the mom dying, him and his dad, who's a veterinarian, moved to a small town that the mom was from.
Yeah, it's such a scenic little town. Like, you know, so many of these kids' movies start off in a place where the kids are isolated and alone, and you know, the whole point is that they're learning to grow and be adults and process things that happen to them in a way. I mean, we explored that with other films like I Kill Giants, right? It's that coming of age film that really is, you know, what it means for a kid to grow up. And they all start off with the same sort of thing: tragedy, small towns, like
Yeah,
touches the heartstrings.
They're moving in, and the Eddie Furlong-looking kid is really weirdly protective about his mom's old stuff. Doesn't want to get rid of the clothes. Doesn't want them to go to Goodwill. One of the mover guys is like, "Are you sure you want these big wardrobe boxes up in the attic?"
Yeah, it's so sad how attached he was to his mom, and like how he's just not processing his grief right. His dad, he's a weird looking dude. Like, he's supposed to be like a kindly father, I guess, but he just looks like a serial killer.
Because he's supposed to be a vet. For me, he just kind of looked like an eye doctor. I don't know what it was about him, but something about his appearance was just optometrist to me.
Yeah, I think partly it was like the big beard and the fact that he wore slightly oversized clothes that made him look too tall and lanky.
But yeah, they go to the clinic that he's going to be taking over, and there's a lot of torn up newspaper on the floor for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, small town buildings get vandalized all the time. It happens. I really loved all the weird wallpaper on the wall that like really show you that this place had not been used since the 70s or whatever. Just like
the weird hand-painted dog wallpaper.
Yeah, it's really good.
But it's not all bad. The Eddie-looking kid stumbles into a jump scare really quick. Just one of those silly kitty jump scares.
Literally.
Yeah. Yeah, it's literally a cat, and he finds a box full of kittens. Oh my god, they were so cute.
They were adorable. Like, as someone who is slowly softening to cats, I was like, fine. I grudgingly find you all very adorable. The kid's name is Jeff, by the way, so we don't have to keep referring to him as, like, Mr. Terminator or whatever.
Eddie Fowlong.
Yeah, but Jeff finds these little kitties, and he's like, Dad, can I keep one of these cats? The dad's like, sure, but yeah, like, we can keep the cats, but you could only keep one. Just one. And being a vet, I'm like, are you going to put down the rest? That's horrible. But no, he was like, yeah, we just give them away. Because that's what you can do in a small town. You can just have a box of kittens, and then people will just take them.
They do a pretty good job of establishing their relationship. The dad understands the kid's going through some stuff because mom just died. So, just clean up the kennels and you can have a cat.
He's still trying to be, I'm still your dad, but he's being sensitive to the kid's needs, which I appreciate. You don't see that a whole lot in movies like this. Usually there's a lot more friction between the two from both sides, whereas I get the sense that, like, Jeff's dad is just trying his best and just doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, usually in kids' movies like this, the parents are either the villains or they're completely clueless about everything, and he does a good job of not being super clueless.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, while they're cleaning up, we get to meet Zowie, the star of the show, the first time.
Yeah, Jeff drops his kitty cat and it starts running away, but then is stopped from running away by Zowie. And oh boy, this dog is adorable.
It's just the best dog actor. It's so cute.
Yeah, like every single shot with Zowie, you could like see in his eyes that he was just like really waiting for that treat from the trainer.
Zowie for best dog.
But Zowie's accompanied by a kid around Jeff's age and a sheriff-looking guy.
Drew and his stepfather Gus, played by the inimitable Clancy Brown.
I always forget his name and just refer to him as Brother Justin from Carnival.
You know it's going to be a good kids movie when you got the guy who voiced Mr. Krabs as well as Raiden from the Mortal Kombat cartoon. He's just, like, he really brings this movie together for me.
I was looking at his body of work and wow, he was in so many things. Like so many things for kids. He's in the new DuckTales. He's in just all sorts of, like, he's in Invincible. He's a great voice actor in addition to being a wonderful, like, physical human actor.
He's just a treat every time he's on screen, honestly. But he does kind of have to play the hard-ass small-town sheriff dad to Drew, which does kind of suck sometimes.
Yeah, it's, for a kid's movie, it's a surprisingly nuanced approach to showing all the different types of parental relationships in there. Because you have, this complicated relationship between Jeff and his dad. We didn't talk about it before, but before the tragedy happened in the beginning, Jeff's parents were separated. So there was already tension there. And so when he lost his mom and was forced to live with his dad, things got even more complicated because their family was already fragmented. And then you see here another sort of family where we don't know what happened to Drew's dad, but Gus is in the picture now, and he's trying to be Drew's father figure in whatever way he can.
And to his credit, he does try in his own way. It's just that sometimes his own way kind of sucks.
I'm going to tap the sign that says ACAB, and we'll just leave it at that. Small town cops, they're often not the greatest folks that end up gravitating to that role.
Things don't go so well for Jeff at school. He tries to sneak his cat friend in his jacket, but he gets some flack for being a famous kid, I guess. I don't know. The movie doesn't really do a good job of establishing how well known he is outside of his mom. They might all just know that he was his mom's son. They even have like a high school kind of memorial magazine's cutout pasted to a poster board in memory of her, which I have to feel to be like a really weird thing to see.
Yeah, it definitely is. But, this was the early 90s where people were not so kind to children's feelings, and they were very much about, like, suck it up, just get over it, young boy. And it's hard enough being A, the new kid in town, B, being the, like, most well-known famous new kid in town that everyone's going to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And C, having to process all that while dealing with the loss of a parent. Like, this kid is in such a hard spot. Maybe it wasn't the best decision to bring his new kitty cat to school, but he needed it. Like, it is definitely an emotional support animal for him.
And to his credit, he does a pretty good job of hiding it when the camera's not making it explicitly known that someone saw him with the cat. He doesn't get hassled by the teachers. He doesn't get hassled by hall monitors. It's basically just the bully of the piece. Some kid. I remember him from something. I don't know his name.
I think he was on either The Wonder Years or Roseanne or something. Some other show of the time period.
That's where I remember him from. He was Tom Hanks as a kid's friend in Big.
Okay. That kid has played all across the spectrum. Like, I think you have a blonde kid, and depending on where he is, he could be cute as a button, like, protagonist, or he could be the school bully. And in this case, you know, he clearly is someone that has grown up hard in a small town. And I do like the fact that, again, this character is surprisingly nuanced.
Mm-hmm.
His character design is amazing, right? Like,
I was just thinking about that.
You know, he's the school tough. He's out there to make Jeff's life living hell. He also kind of pushes Drew around because kids' movie lives are like very feudal, right? They're very like whoever has the power wins. But this kid, for a small town, is serving up some looks. Right, he's got like
surprisingly fashionable.
Yeah, he kind of has this John Cusack from Say Anything sort of vibe going on, or the girl from The Breakfast Club. Just that like kind of oversized trench coat with shorts and like a big knit scarf that he wears in every scene, and 3 earrings in the heterosexual ear. Because it was the 90s and that was the only way you could wear earrings as a man.
Yeah, and then like the 90s edgy, I'm not wearing a cross for religious purposes, dangly cross earring as well.
Mm-hmm. And that like shitty little like teen facial hair, which...
The peach fuzz.
It's super good.
Yeah, no, when they get him in the night shots later, like it's really illuminated by the background lighting.
Again, like the last film that we watched, like in I Kill Giants, it's refreshing to see young people of the appropriate age play children that age instead of like 20-somethings.
When they say, you know, we got to get back to class, and you're like, oh, what, you're not going to make enough credits for your doctorate degree there, Mr. 33-year-old? No, these are kids, and they're pretty decent kid actors, I gotta say.
Yeah. You know, you're supposed to hate him, right? You're supposed to hate the bully because he's making Jeff's life hell. And he's got a little gang of followers, one of which is surprisingly Drew. I did not expect it.
He's just kind of dragged along, it seems like he's the punching bag of the group. So he's not on the inside of that circle, but he's orbiting around it. So him and Jeff do kind of become friends a little bit because they both kind of understand what it's like to not have a parent in the picture.
Yeah, and they bond over pets. They bond over Zowie and the little kitty cat and stuff. And you get the sense that like everyone here is trying their best. It's a small town in Maine, somewhere on the East Coast, at least judging by the only accent in the film from our beloved Clancy Brown.
Clancy Brown.
Yeah, that is a choice. It's weird that no one else is even attempting it, but Clancy's just going for it all the way.
Yeah, he does drop it later. It's just a part of what makes this role of his really stand out. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we get introduced to another major part of the movie after the bully steals the kitten. And they go on a chase, and the bully's like actually holding the kitten up while riding his bike and screaming in its face, "Are we having fun?"
Yeah, that was really scary because like that kitten was really being held up by that child riding a bicycle. And I know that they probably had people watching this, but like pet danger.
That cat can't understand you, dude. What are you doing? This is for you. That was a you move.
Yeah, there is a there's a bicycle chase.
Not the only one, but it ends in a tussle. Jeff gets into a bit of a row with the fashionista bully boy.
Yeah. And in clear TV tropes language, he's like, yeah, I kicked your cat and now it's dead and you're going to have to bury it because I'm a bully and I want to hurt you because you're famous and you're more popular than me. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, his motives aren't super established other than he's just being a dick most of the time.
Again, this is in the like 90s where bullies could be even bullier. And like the director pulls no punches with the understanding of the cruelty of children towards one another and towards like their parents. And, you know, they don't have proper boundaries established yet, and so they could just lash out in whatever way that they feel. And so like again, I do not condone any of that, but like it's a refreshing sort of thing that they're not pulling any punches with their treatment of children. It is very honest.
Yeah, and credit again to the child actors. Like I didn't realize that the bully didn't really have any motivation aside from just being the bully until we were talking about it just now, because he just does it. It's on screen. Like you don't need to know why. That's who he is.
And you can accept it because kids are like that, right? Like kids just do things, and sometimes they don't have clear motivations for themselves of why they're doing it, but they just kind of follow their feelings. And if their feelings say, I just need to put this kid in his place, then that's what they do.
But it turns out the cat's alive. He just sort of sequestered him off the beaten path in this animal graveyard thing in a bird cage.
It was actually a nice little memorial garden with like statuary, and you know, it's the sort of thing that this town clearly loves its animals. Like the people here have really good solid relationships with their animal companions, and it reinforces how important animals are to the children. And so when you see Drew and Zowie and Jeff and his little kitty cat together, like
Tiger, I forgot they named the cat Tiger.
they did. Yeah. Again, it's all about people and their animals, and it, you know, it's kind of sweet.
Yeah, and there's a little background show don't tell signs of solidarity. Like these are handmade grave markers, and they've got, you know, well wishes written on them and like signatures from, I'm assuming, other kids, you know, to wish family and neighborhood pets goodbye. And it's really kind of sweet. And thankfully the kitten's unharmed. He's just in some random bird cage that's hanging from a pole.
Yeah, it is a little weird that there's like a random bird cage, but yeah, I think at this point Drew and Jeff are starting to bond a little bit, and Drew wants to prove that he's cool, so he like tells Jeff about this like ghost story of the area, and like tries to be like, well, you know, I am not scared of ghosts. I'm not scared of these things, and like I'm not scared of the supernatural. And you're like, no, you're just a kid who is scared of his stepfather, and I get it.
You're also clearly afraid of the words that you're saying.
Yeah, 100%. But Jeff just takes it in. He's like, well, yeah, okay. Yeah, like...
Small town, local legend.
Yeah, it's haunted areas, like whatever.
But yeah, at this point, we haven't had nearly enough Zowie, so back to Drew's house for more Zowie.
Yeah. So, content warning here. Like, the cop, not very good to animals.
Yeah, Zowie's not allowed to be in the house most of the time.
No. And he keeps a bunch of, like, rabbits in a cage out front that he, like, has wrapped.
He likes to stare at them.
He likes to stare at them, and he's wrapped an electric fence around it just to keep Zowie out, because Zowie hurt himself trying to get to the rabbits last time. The rabbits scratched him in the face, which is why they took him to the vet initially. And so, you know, he's trying to keep the dog away from the rabbits and the rabbits away from the dog, but like dogs got to be dogs and rabbits got to be rabbits. So, you know, I get it. I get what he's trying to do, but yeah, I wish that dog could just like run free and roam wherever he wanted, but they're trying to keep him to the places where he belongs.
It seems like Clancy Brown's character is trying to parent solely by setting up boundaries, which isn't the best.
Yeah, hard boundaries. You also, again, in some environmental storytelling, you see some signs up that are like, hey, rabbits, $10. Like, this is clearly a guy with a side hustle who's breeding rabbits to sell to other people in the community. They're really cute. They're like these little white fluffy bunnies. There is some rabbit sex in this, so content warning.
If you're not, if that's troubling to you, just, maybe fast forward through that part.
Yeah.
The part that was really, really weird, though, is he had a rabbit, like, on his thigh, and he was, like, sort of petting it, and then staring at the rabbits while they were rabbiting.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Small towns. But, yeah, there's some sort of tough love parenting from Gus to Drew, where, Drew wants to bring Zowie in, but he's like, nope, you got to keep that dog outside. Do not want it in the house, and you keep him away from the rabbits. And, it definitely is a point of contention between the two.
I mean, you can definitely see where he set up arbitrary boundaries just to have set them up, and Drew's still not cool with that. Like, there's no watching TV while they're at the dinner table. He makes a comment about Drew's weight. And I just realized this now, like, he wants the dog outside, but he also wants Drew to keep the dog away from the rabbits, which, if he really wanted the dog away from the rabbits, keep the dog inside the house.
He is not the cleverest of men, and things kind of go exactly the way that you would expect.
Yeah, Zowie tries to free the rabbits, and content warning, this is a kid's movie, sure, but, stuff like this has happened in kids' movies before, like Old Yeller, that sort of thing. I probably just gave up the ghost by saying that, but, yeah. Zowie just tried to get into the rabbit cages one too many times, and Gus is a cop at Zowie.
Yeah. Full disclosure, shirtless Clancy Brown, in his youth, not bad looking. But he is running through the house with a gun, and, he's trying to scare Zowie off because he just doesn't want this dog messing up the rabbits or getting messed up by the rabbits. And I guess it's dark. You hear a gunshot and you hear a sort of yelp, and it's a hard thing.
It felt almost a little too long, but there's a scene where Drew finds Zowie and just sort of stays with Zowie while he passes on.
Yeah.
And the song on the soundtrack was, like, good, but it really reminded me of, like, early Tenacious D, which was kind of dissonant.
It was a little too folky, I think, in a weird way. But this is one of those scenes that it's tragic, sure, but every time they get a shot of Zowie, the look on that dog's face is just so pleased that it's about to get a treat. It's just like, yeah,
I did it.
He ends up finding Zowie, and it's late at night. And I don't exactly remember how he meets up with Jeff, but at some point they meet up.
Yeah, and as is tradition, he takes Zowie and he goes to bury him in the animal burial ground.
Yeah, like, he wants to make sure that Zowie's spirit lives on and is remembered. It's a kid and his friend trying to do their best to deal with the concept of mortality. And, like, Jeff's been through it, and, seeing his friend go through it, it's like, damn, okay, like, it's the middle of the night and things are awful. Yeah, I'll go help you. Do you want me to help you do this? And Drew, in a show of more maturity than you would expect, he's like, no, I have to do this myself. I have to get closure by interring my animal in the ground. And it's sad, like, right? Like, everyone owns their own grief is the message of this movie. And, like, this is one of those scenes where, it's a tough thing to watch a kid have to bury a beloved animal, but yeah, it happens.
Yeah, and if you don't like seeing dead animals, the scene might be a little rough for you. As someone who makes stuff, as a maker, as someone who appreciates good props, that's a really good dead dog prop. But as someone who loves dogs, I cried a little. Because, like, it really looks like that kid's carrying a dead dog.
Really floppy in all the wrong places.
Yeah, they have to climb over a big pile of crap because, the front part of the graveyard's, like, full, so they have to go to the back part.
Yeah, and it's like it's one of those small towns where they've been reusing this same graveyard from all the way back to the founding of the country, and so
Yeah, like before colonial
Yeah,
times and stuff.
it's interesting to see all of the sort of different memorial rites. I was actually surprised that they included that level of cultural literacy there, where it's like, no, grief and the connection between people and animals goes all the way back, and regardless of what society you're in, like everyone cares about their pets, and they're if an animal is with you during your life, like you remember it. It's part of your family.
Yeah, they sort of try to go back to their lives. Gus is mad at Drew. The movie didn't do a good job of conveying it, but apparently they skipped school to take care of this in like the dead of night. They wanted a good dark funeral, you know? You don't want the sun shining down like it's a happy day or something. This is a sad time. It's time to mourn, so...
Yeah, and like I really like that, you know, the whole boys just having their own adventures, but also like trying to be adults in that space. It's kind of it's a great little genre, you know. It's got almost like Stand By Me vibes, but it you know, not quite that like dark.
Yeah. And I feel like the phrase "boys will be boys" has been thoroughly ruined by people who try to use it to excuse horrible things. And this is like what I feel it was originally meant to convey. Just this sort of companionship.
Yeah. At this point, like it's been a pretty standard like emotional kids movie, but much like I Kill Giants, it takes a turn for sort of magical realism.
Yeah, it really threw a curveball at me because I must have completely blanked out like this whole last half of the movie. I swear it was different when I watched it, but it's not important. Gus bangs on Drew's door. Zowie has come back.
And Gus doesn't think anything of it because Gus just fired a warning shot and he's like, that dog ran off. And then you skipped school and you're being a jerk. But
I mean, he's a little mad. Drew said that he had to bury Zowie, and he assumed because Zowie, you know, is back that he wasn't actually gone. He's grounded for that, but the kid's got his dog back. Zowie's back in the movie.
Zowie is so dirty. So dirty. You know, Zowie is such an important character, but so far in the movie, he's been kind of, you know, a playful, if mischievous sort of dog. But the Zowie that has gone through this sort of transformative trauma with Drew is different. And you see it through the eyes of Drew, where, like, it's not the same dog that he left earlier. He has changed, and the dog has changed. And it's a great little bit of sort of symbolism and magical reality where you're seeing the difference in this dog through the character's eyes.
Yeah, it's almost like in Lord of the Rings when Gandalf dies fighting the Balrog as Gandalf the Grey, and then he comes back as Gandalf the White. It's sort of a reverse. Zowie passes away as Zowie the White and comes back as Zowie the Brown. Yeah,
like he's filthy and gross, and like, I don't know, maybe it's the shedding of innocence, right? Like you can't idealize this dog anymore. You know, dogs got to be dogs, and sometimes dogs end up maybe like getting into mischief with some rabbits, and like, who knows? But there's something different between them now, and it's interesting to see.
And we get a bit of a time skip. We just zip right to Halloween. Drew is dressed up as a Dracula. Not a vampire, a Dracula. It's very...
Specifically a Dracula.
It's a specific costume.
Yeah, like the sort of Eddie Munster Widow's Peak, like high red collar, that type of Dracula photocopied like 7 times.
Drew's mom's a pretty understanding gal, so she cuts him a break. He can go out trick-or-treating as long as he's back before Gus gets back, because he's technically supposed to be grounded.
We forgot to mention, but Drew took Zowie over to Jeff and his dad in order to have them take care of him, because he didn't want him to, you know, he's worried about him because he'd been out all night, and he didn't want Gus to do whatever Gus was going to do to his dog again. So he's like, hey, can you take care of my dog? He's looking a little funny, and like, you're a vet, you can take care of him, just make sure he's like treated well. And it, like, that was a really sweet thing. It was a really sweet thing for Jeff's dad to say, yeah, like, I'll take in your dog. I'll take care of him. Like, you're basically a random stranger kid to me, but like, you're important to my son. And so therefore, yeah, we'll take care of your dog.
We'll do you a solid, Dracula child.
Yep.
It's important to note he's not a Dracula when they take in Zowie.
No. He is only a Dracula later, which is just preface to say that, like, whatever drama happens between Drew and his family at this point is, like, Zowie free, because Zowie is off hanging out with, like, all the cute little box kitties and stuff.
But it's Halloween, and that means mischief, and unfortunately the bully, who I guess is going to Halloween as a bank robber because his only costume seems to be his regular clothes and pantyhose over his head.
He will not give up that scarf.
I mean, I wouldn't if I had it, so, I get it. But yeah, they give Jeff some more grief by throwing a dummy dressed up like his mom at him.
Yeah, it seems like it was set up by all of the kids in the neighborhood, and it's not great to re-traumatize a traumatized child, but, he's clearly been having troubles. Like, you saw earlier before this, like, he had some nightmares about his mom sitting in his room, and he clearly misses her, and seeing her pass in front of him definitely was a traumatic thing for him.
Yeah, and these kids are not soft about it. They keep talking about, it's really gross how she got fried like that, and, other 90s-esque dialogue.
Yeah, and instead of leaving, he's like, well, I guess I just have to suck it up because literally all of the kids in my grade are here.
So they gather around a fire at the Animal Companion graveyard for some ghost stories and underage drinking.
It's not just the bullies. It's also like other teens that you saw in his classes, including one kid who definitely was dressing up for Halloween as a girl, which, speaking as a trans woman, we all been there. Like, I can pretty much tell you that, like, every single trans woman I know has gone through that, like, no, this is just a costume. It's for Halloween. I just look like a pretty lady for Halloween. I'm not implying anything. I'm just saying it's amusing to see.
Yeah, and I just want to make it clear, honest, I'm not laughing at Kate. It's just an amusing anecdote. I'm laughing. I don't know. I'm digging myself a hole.
Don't worry about it.
And I will get out of that hole by letting you all know that I dressed like the same Dracula Drew did when I was a kid.
Yeah, Draculas are a pretty popular costume. Growing up in the suburbs, but being an immigrant, I didn't really understand what costumes were supposed to be, and so I dressed up as weird things. I was like a floppy disk one year that I made out of a cardboard box.
That's awesome.
I think I was like an alligator one year. Like, the things that were just like not really scary or cool, they were just like random objects.
I was Scorpion one year because I was really into Mortal Kombat that year. I was Green Lantern one year. I think the first time ever, my first Halloween ever, I was a cowboy. I don't remember that because I was one. But there are pictures of it, so I know it happened.
Nice. Yeah, we forgot to mention that Jeff was there dressed up as Jason from Friday the 13th.
Yeah, for like a hot minute, and then he takes his mask off, and it's just his hand the rest of the time. 90% of that costume is the mask, man. What are you doing?
Yeah, he's just a guy in a jumpsuit at that point, which I guess he could be like a low-rent Ghostbuster or something.
Or a mechanic. I don't know. It's like going to Halloween dressed as a fry cook. But yeah, we get some more local ghost story flavor.
Yeah, apparently this community is like real spooky. Kids love to flex that sort of thing because they, especially young boys, want to show that they're brave.
They even pull that, and they could be here right now. But then the only one who's there right now is Gus.
Yeah, and Gus is not happy that Drew snuck out with his mom's permission, but like snuck out without Gus's permission.
And I guess he also just really hates vampires. I don't know. That's what it seems like to me.
Yeah.
Because he's going to discipline that kid by picking up a cross and then bearing it at him, I guess, was the plan. I can't imagine what else he would do.
Yeah, it was a little weird. I guess he was just like really leaning into the theme. Maybe there's a bit of playfulness in their relationship that he was trying to bring back up. He's like, look, I'm mad at you, but you're dressed as a vampire, so I'm going to punish you as a vampire, but I'm still buying into the thing that you're selling. I'm not just like being a hard ass for no reason.
But Zowie takes these actions to be more aggressive than, we might otherwise think. And out of nowhere, just rescues Drew, tackles Gus to the ground.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing that is going to lead to a bad end because I've never actually watched Old Yeller or other things, but whenever the dog challenges authority in order to protect the kid, it never goes well.
Yeah, and I guess Zowie in their new resurrected Gandalf the Grey form is a little more overzealous than old happy-go-lucky Zowie and takes a pretty big chunk out of Gus's neck.
Yeah, like, to be fair, it didn't look that bad of a wound, but it's a pretty traumatic thing for a kids movie, right? Like,
yeah,
at that point the kids are afraid of everything. They're afraid of the dog, they're afraid of the situation, they don't know what to do, but they're like, hey, we should try to help Gus. We don't know what to do, so maybe we'll take him over to the Memorial Park area, try to patch him up or something. And I don't know what kids do. Like, I don't know if they like,
I don't know, maybe they thought whatever healing properties the dirt had that helped Zowie might help Gus.
Yeah, like, they never really make the mythology super clear. It's kind of, again, I keep referring to I Kill Giants, but like, it's a similar situation where like they believe in this certain level of healing magic of this area that really isn't super well explained, and it just kind of is a presumption of the film that you're on board with this. And so they're like, look, we just got to take Gus to the healing spring or whatever is over there.
Yeah, the healing dirt mounds.
Yeah. And they're like, look, like, whatever healed Zowie up will heal Gus, and he'll be fine. And it's a hard thing when you see the super strong, super strict enforcer of the rules be vulnerable and be human and be mortal. Like, that's kind of like, even if you didn't love the situation you were in, the fact that the people who were in control are no longer in control is super scary.
But thankfully, whatever helped Zowie out seems to work for Gus. He comes back almost as a completely different actor. Like, from this point on, this is about the halfway through the movie, he's just going nuts, like he's possessed by one of the Three Stooges or something.
Yeah, he definitely takes a comedic turn to this performance, but it shows through Drew's eyes this reframing of his relationship with Gus. He's no longer this like tyrannical figure in his life. He's just like a wacky guy. He could see the person that his mom loved and chose to bring into this house, who's just like cooking pancakes for him, like making weird jokes. Like, he even tells Jeff later that like they feel like a family. And it's these sorts of experiences where kids learn that their parents are people too, that really let them break down those walls.
Yeah, and really there's an introduction of an element to this character that just had me cracking up. Like, every so often he'll take a pratfall. Like, he's not working the body just right. Like, he's going up the stairs when he first comes back, and he just falls face first right into the stairs, laughs at himself, gets up, and goes right on up the stairs.
Yeah, it's magic in the sort of like big sense of, we don't really know how it works, but it's changed everything. And we just accept it, and we accept that like this wacky new Gus is just a much better version of the Gus than before Halloween. It was a Halloween miracle.
It was a Halloween miracle. Things go a little off the rails right around when Gus tries to defend Jeff from the bullies. Because they show up again, and we get our second bike chase. And the bully this time has an automated bike, a motorbike, if you will. And rides up next to Jeff, who's trying to outpedal it, which seems like a Bush League move, honestly.
Yeah, this was like the scene at the beginning of Goonies where the bullies in the car grab the kid on the bike's handlebar and drive forward with him. I think it's literally exactly the same scene, except instead of a car, it's a moped this time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
it's like a dirt bike.
Yeah, it's some real peril.
Yeah, runs him right off the road and is about to shove his face into his own bike's spokes. There's some tension there, but thankfully Gus shows up and tells Jeff to go home, and just really lays into the bully about it.
Yeah, and like this is a different Gus than we've seen before, but he's still an adult, right? He still has to discipline a child that has like stepped beyond the boundaries, and he really tries to show him the consequences of his actions.
But Gus, not being used to this new life, as shown with his pratfalls before, accidentally takes it a little too far, and the bully, his name I want to say is Clyde?
Yeah, Clyde.
I guess it doesn't matter. He is the one who ends up with a face full of tire.
Yeah, I don't condone bullying the bullies. I think they got their own problems. I got them there. But Gus had to learn the lesson the hard way, and he felt bad about it. And so, weirdly enough, he also decided to take the bully to the magical healing area, which I guess this town has now. The immersion into magical realism was kind of abrupt, but once it's there, it's just there. Like, people just kind of buy into it.
Yeah, it's not so much an immersion as it is a deep dive into magical realism, because Jeff starts thinking about it, and he wonders if the magical healing dirt can do something for his mom, which doesn't seem like a good idea.
Yeah, it's a weird logic leap, but you know he's had seen a lot of tragedy recently. But he's also seen how Gus, who was on the brink of death, came back a kinder, gentler man, a better man for his family, and Jeff misses his mom, and his dad was like, yeah, I think that if she hadn't died, we probably would have gotten back together. And he was like, my dad misses my mom. And I don't know, if there's magic here in this town, why not use it to try to heal the wounds that we're all carrying around?
Thankfully, Jeff's dad realizes something might be up. So he goes and visits the former veterinarian, who's like, yeah, there's magic dirt there. Don't let anybody use it. If everyone found out about it, everyone would want to use it, and people would just be overrunning the town. And also, he just has like a crow that I thought was taxidermied, but then he throws something at it and it's alive, which was really weird.
Yeah. He's a weird old magic man, and like he's your wise old sage who's just seen too much shit, and like it's like nope, do not want any more of this. Like I've seen all of this before, and like you can't use magic to solve your problems. That's pretty much what he's trying to say.
They kind of foreshadow that a little bit because he was the town veterinarian, but now he's taken up animal taxidermy, sort of showing that like. When something's passed on, it can't come back as the same thing. And you just have to accept that loss.
Yeah, and like that's a message that this town has not learned over and over and over. You know, the kids all talk about this like magical healing dirt area, and everyone knows about it, and everyone kind of talks about it, and it's like, no, just be okay with just the memorial garden. Right? You don't need to go further than memorializing the loved ones that you've lost. Just remember them and let them go. This is a cautionary tale about the way grief can really cause all sorts of problems in kids and adults alike.
Especially in the next part, Drew sees Gus taking care of the bully being overzealous with it. So Gus chases after him. He tries to tell him it was an accident. I was just messing with him. I didn't mean for it to go that far. And he chases Gus back home through the house. Drew thinks that Gus is trying to, harm him. And he's just trying to have a talk with him.
Yeah.
But yeah, it ends in a car chase to Gus tries to chase after them in his police car, and there's a car accident, and Drew and his mom crash into a potato truck.
Yeah, it's pretty horrible. This whole movie revolves around mortality. Like, it's really one gut punch after another, right? Like, if you just strapped Old Yeller to My Girl to Bridge of Terabithia to like every other kids movie with tragedy in it, you get bingo. And like, it is up, down, left, right, free space. The free space is tragedy. Everything runs through tragedy.
But you can see that Gus is learning in his new and improved form. He's learning that things sometimes just need to stay down because he doesn't dig Drew and his mom's bodies out of the pile of potatoes that crushed them to death and take them to the magical healing dirt place. He lets them lay. He lets things be as they are.
It's an interesting sort of choice because, like, the man is experiencing a lot of grief. It's broken him to the point where he's not acting rationally at all. And Jeff's dad tries to go over and talk to him, but he finds out that Gus and Jeff's mom used to be an item back in the day, and he's so grief-stricken over the whole thing that, like...
Yeah.
They fight over her memory.
He must have been, like, really deep in just like, moving into a new place fugue, having just lost his wife fugue, because Gus has brought it up a couple times. He didn't outright say anything, but he's heavily implied that, you know, they had an intimate relationship, and this is the first time it comes to something.
Yeah, it's a little out of the blue that Gus would try to use this knowledge to make Jeff's dad feel bad, but he's in a bad place, and I get it. I guess he's had some tragedy and he just needs to feel like a strong guy again, because, you know, he's the sheriff. He couldn't protect his family from accident or death, so, like, you know, he's got to feel big again by reasserting that he used to date the Hollywood star.
They have a bit of a tussle. Jeff's dad has a gun, I guess because he's from, you know, Hollywood and it's rough out there. And it goes off a few times. And Clancy Brown does a really good I've been shot pratfall and pulls a cabinet down on himself. Which, like, it's funny. It's not the time to be funny, but it's funny.
It's kind of the culmination of Gus as the movie's villain, because, like, he's all the things that Jeff's dad could have ended up being if he let his grief consume him. And so symbolically, I understand what this conflict is. It's kind of wild that, like, he kind of just, like, accidentally murdered the sheriff of this town, but, like, who's going to investigate?
Who's going to look at it? The sheriff? Away. It kind of makes me think, like, from the point after Drew and his mom pass, nobody else comes back except for, you know, the implied people who were already going to be coming back. And it occurs to me that one of the names for potatoes, ground apples, right? So in not unburying his spouse and stepchild, he's refusing to pick the apple, right?
You could say that he does not want knowledge, right? Because we've seen that every time someone is healed by the magic, people see them differently. They're no longer as black and white or idyllic as they came off at the beginning. And I think some part of him recognizes that he doesn't want to change the memories of his family.
Yeah.
And maybe he wants to preserve them as they are and not try to, like, recontextualize them in any way, because, like, he's not strong enough. He's clearly just not a strong enough man to see his relationship with his wife and his son for what it actually was.
We get to the climax and it's worked. The magical healing dirt has worked its magic on Jeff's mom, and she's back. But his dad, kind of having learned from his experience with Gus, says this isn't how it should be, you know.
Yeah, like the version of her that came back is the perfect version from their memories. It's the, like, perfect Hollywood, made-up, beautiful, flawless starlet. And it's you know, all throughout the movie, you see Jeff's dad and Jeff watching old films of her, which actually were real films starring the actress, which is wild.
That's awesome.
They're looking back through their memories and filtering it through this idealized lens. And
they both know that that's not who she really was.
And so the magic, much like any sort of wish, has given her back the way they want her. But yeah, they've both grown up a lot throughout the course of the movie.
Yeah, and because we need one last twist and turn, Clyde shows up because he's refusing to learn from his experience. He's refusing to move on from his mistakes like Gus did, like Drew and Jeff did. So he attacks them with a fire axe.
Yeah, that was really unexpected. And wow, what a shocking action climax for this, this cute animal movie. It kind of doesn't really go anywhere exactly. Eventually, he's subdued, and Jeff is left with the choice, right? Like, does he stay there with his mom? His dad's like, no, we can't stay here. We can't live in this memory forever. We have to deal with our grief and move on.
He breaks through that symbolically by busting out a locked door with that axe. And then him and his dad drive off into the sunset. Well, a very odd in memoriam type deal shows every character that has passed in the movie.
It starts with tragedy and ends in tragedy. It's a pretty bleak movie, TBH.
Yeah, I guess as a kid, a lot of this just flew over my head, and I just didn't remember a ton of it. I mean, kids... attention spans. But yeah, doing research on it, I found out it's the sequel to a movie that was based on a book, but the author disliked the sequel so much that he had his name removed from anything about the sequel. So I guess it doesn't really matter. It's just like a Dean Koontz or something. I don't know.
Yeah, or like an R.L. Stine or something. I don't really know. It's a wild film that, like, I can't believe they got away with a lot of the sort of stuff that they did for a kids movie.
I mean, the 90s was definitely a different time. I say that as if I was not a child during the 90s.
I got to be an adult for the end of the 90s, and yeah, it was a different time. Well, if you look back on some of the media that was made in the 90s, they weren't afraid of traumatizing children at all. They were like, no, we're going to show you some real weird, wild stuff.
Yeah, like Large Marge from Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Fantasia. It's just like that, really.
But just like over and over and over. And, I throughout watching the film, I was like kind of wondering what the title meant, but I think I understand it after having seen the whole thing about like...
It's that realization you come to after you've been through some shit. Like, bingo. That's it.
Yeah. But you don't know what is really going to give you that sort of like epiphany, right? It's all these individual disconnected little dots of tragedy in your life that like really help you learn and grow and become a person. I think there's like one scene in the movie where somebody says it offhand, and I wanted to do the little MST3K clap for it, but like it was a very subtle sort of way of putting it, and I appreciated that.
One more small fun fact. The lady who directed this also directed the first one. More importantly, she directed Double Switch, an FMV game that was only made for the Sega CD, which is one of the most 90s consoles imaginable.
Yeah. She actually had a really wild career. She directed a bunch of music videos, including Madonna's Like a Prayer.
Wow.
Like a bunch of stuff for like Motley Crue and Bobby Brown and Eurythmics and the Go-Go's, and like she was really there at the beginning of MTV, and you kind of feel that vibe throughout the whole thing. It has a very MTV vibe.
There's a lot of very music video-esque moments, especially with the needle drops that happen. And like I said at the beginning, aside from, the canned music, they have some really good, if offbeat, for a kids movie choices. Like, this is some good music.
I do kind of wish that they had released the soundtrack, but they never did officially release the soundtrack. But it has some really interesting choices. So if you ever get the chance, go on Spotify and look up like Bingo soundtrack, because it's wild. Someone's probably created a playlist.
Yeah, that's Bingo. I rented it on Amazon Prime. It doesn't look like there's any way to see it free right now, unless you know somebody that owns it.
No, it was 11:15 p.m. and I was like, I should probably watch Bingo, and I looked it up on Amazon Prime, and it said it was on AMC, and I had to subscribe to AMC, but it was expiring in 45 minutes. And I was like...
I saw that same thing when it was at 78 minutes, and I looked at the runtime of the movie. I was like, oh, I'll be able to watch half of it before it runs out.
I took the gamble, and I just started it with 45 minutes left. It did not boot me out. I got to finish the whole film 105 minutes of runtime later, and yeah. So... it's no longer on AMC Plus streaming. I think literally the only places that you can watch it are like YouTube, Amazon if you pay for it, and some other places. I don't think there's anywhere where you could stream it for free.
Yeah, I almost picked up the DVD from Half Price Books, but it was, once you included shipping, it was almost $20, which is like, nostalgia is great and all, but...
Yeah, how many times are you going to rewatch this kid's movie?
Right, yeah, it's one of the reasons I am very strict with myself about what I can and can't have physical copies of.
Exactly. I would love to see a commentary track on this film, though, because they made some real wild choices, and I would love to hear the director's thoughts on why exactly they chose to do the sort of things that they did, because...
Even just being able to talk to Clancy Brown and get like some insight into that performance, because the first part of the movie, it's good. He does a good job. He does a passable accent. Second half, when he comes back, he's just crazy. He's a crazy character.
It's definitely a choice, and it's an interesting one. I kind of understand, right? Magic is symbolic of being in denial about your grief. Things get weird when that happens. But, like, it's a little too on the nose. All in all, I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was definitely worth watching with some friends. It's not the sort of thing that, like, I would say is really...
Yeah, this isn't aged well as...
Watch it by yourself.
Yeah, not a by-yourself movie. Probably wouldn't actually show it to kids nowadays. It was a 90s kids movie. I don't know that it would fly as a today kids movie.
Like, if you have a particularly sophisticated tween or teenager with appropriate supervision, I think maybe it's something that you can watch with them, because it does have some really interesting points about dealing with grief and like what it means to be an adult. But yeah, I wouldn't just like plop a kid in front of an iPad playing this.
Especially not alone.
No, not unless you want just expensive therapy bills later on in their life.
All right, well, I guess that's that. Kate, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on TikTok and Twitter as Army of Meat. And where can people find you, Sky?
You can find me on Twitter at Shard_Corso. That's SHARD_CORSO. If you have any suggestions for the podcast, you can drop them at the podcast Twitter, Interesting Choice6. That's INTRESTINGCHOI6.
And if you want to look up our previous episodes and listen to our thoughts about films like I Kill Giants, you can find us on Spreaker. And that's www.spreaker.com/shows/interesting choices. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, YouTube, everywhere.
We are everywhere, and if you'd like to hear us talk about a movie that Edward Furlong is actually in, we talk about Brain Scan. But yeah, and then if you want to support the show, you can do so by finding us at patreon.com/interesting choices. Donating at the $2 a month level means we will give you a shout out at the end of every episode for the month you donate. And donating at the $5 a month level means you can help us pick what we do next.
Yeah, so hit us up, and I guess we'll see you next time.
Yeah, as always, thanks for listening. We'll see you next episode.
Bye.
Bye. Wait a minute, that wasn't bingo?